Hello and welcome to all of you viewers out there in TLBTV land. I'm your host, Lorana, and you've joined us for another edition of Write the World, where we speak to all sorts of different authors and writers. We learn lots of nifty details about the craft, and of course, we bring you some amazing, fantastic books that you have to check out. Today, I'm super excited to have another Christian author as our guest. So welcome to Gretchen Davies.
Hi.
Hi, Gretchen, how are you?
Pretty good.
All right. Well, I am super curious. I know that we met on Facebook through some chats, but tell me, how long have you been writing?
Essentially all my life. As a child, I just went and did poetry, or I think back to like third and fourth grade. I loved Beverly Cleary's Ramona series. So I would often add alternate endings or different chapters on my own. So it's always been a hobby. But for some reason, even if I tried to sit down and actually write a novel, which was always something in my heart that I wanted to do, I get about 3 pages in and it wouldn't work. And then finally, I just had an idea for my book about 2 years ago and sat down and started writing a little bit of it. And suddenly I was at page, I think, 45. And I was like, well, I guess I'm writing a book.
I know it's fun when you get to that 45 page mark. I think that's about where I am in the one I'm working on now. And it's a little close to halfway. It's not quite halfway, but you're like, okay, I'm getting there. 45 pages in, I know where I'm going now.
Putting back once you're there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's not true. I once started a book and I got 20,000 words in and then realized that it wasn't working with the storyline. And I started over from scratch and I was like, 25,000 words. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to tweak it and it's going to become a novella for a Christmas series that I'm doing. So I think it's going to work out. It won't be wasted time, which is good. So how long did it take you to finish your first book?
I think I started it in about February and finished at least the writing process around about May or June, and then went through the editing and re-editing and formatting, rinse, lather, repeat, until the next year in January.
Wow, that's kind of a long process going through that. I don't think most people realize how long it takes to put a book together and do it well. I mean, you can throw a book out there, but it's not usually done well when you do that. I had, we sometimes as authors, we try to reach out to people. And so I had one of my books on a book funnel promo where people can get it for free. And when a lady unsubscribed, she actually wrote, I only do free books. And I was like, do you know how much goes into this book? I mean, not only the time, but then the price of editing and formatting and covers and everything. And I thought, wow, that's just kind of crazy to me. I mean, I know we all like to get stuff for free, but this is our job too.
Exactly. I used to go, ooh, free books, and I sometimes do offer my book for free. But then once I wrote a book, I was like, wow, if I'm not, if the author's offering it for free, I'll take it. But if I'm only looking for free books, that's shortchanging the author and all their work. And it really changed my perspective once I had to go through that.
Exactly. And I don't think a lot of people think about that. It's kind of like when we used to record movies or whatever, and they were always like, oh, piracy is a crime. And you never think about it until you're doing something that requires all of that time and that effort and those creative juices. And then it's like, wow, seriously? Like people won't, I mean, I have my books priced at like less than a cup of coffee for the most part. And I think yours are pretty similar. So it's like, you can't fork out what you would do at Starbucks for a cup of coffee to get a good book. It's kind of crazy to me. I think the industry has changed a little bit with, I love self-publishing. I think it's fantastic, but I think when it came, it sort of set up the standard that we would all offer these books like ridiculously cheap or free all the time. And it's just it's not possible to do that. So tell us about your book. Where'd you get the idea for this first book, and what's the title of it?
The title is We're Only Human, and it kind of just goes into the aspect of we're all flawed, and the world is flawed, but at the same time we are human, just kind of that idea. But really what spawned the idea of the book is my husband sometimes travels for work, and he ended up the last minute canceling, or some trip got canceled. And we thought, wow, I wonder why the trip got canceled, because a bunch of other people in his group went and he didn't. And, nothing good or bad came of it. but we were just brainstorming, and I kind of got fixated on that idea and thought, well, what could cause someone to not go somewhere?
Yeah.
And so I just went through a bunch of ideas, and some of them were very morose, like, oh, the plane's going to go down or something horrible. But then I thought, no, that's awful. What could a good reason be? And so I came up with two of the characters in my book, Jeremy and Rachel, end up adopting overseas. And so they were able to get last minute tickets for both of them to fly overseas and adopt a child. So that's a good reason why, a trip would get canceled. And then another, one of my main characters, Amanda, unfortunately, her grandmother's ill, and she at first can't get a ticket to go see her grandmother overseas, and then someone else cancels their plans, so she gets that last minute ticket to go see her grandmother before she passes away.
Wow. Yeah, it's really cool. And the thread of, the things happen for unknown reasons that we don't always see, but that there's
Exactly.
sort of my pastor calls it the big plan and the little plan. We always see the little plan down here, but we don't often see the big plan that's working up above us.
Exactly. And that's kind of another premise of the book, is that there are no coincidences. And sometimes we do see that there are no coincidences and find out why. And other times we don't know what's happening under, the radar, and we never find out. But in this book, you do find out. So that's kind of exciting, at least I think, as a reader, like, ooh, that's why that happened.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. And then you have a second book out as well, correct?
It's in the works. I have, because I'm publishing through Create Space, so it's kind of on there in a placeholder. I'm almost done writing it, but keep suffering writer's block. And I'm trying to edit as I write, so that once I finish writing, it'll be done sooner. And it follows, for those that have read the book or will read the book, it follows a character named Frank and his family. And then to add an element of surprise, it intertwines a few other characters from my first novel, but it mainly starts with Frank and a woman who ends up being his wife. So there's that romantic element, I guess, but it kind of went on its own trajectory.
Yeah. Do you find that your books do that a lot, where you kind of think you have the idea, but then once you start writing, you're like, whoa, that's not really what I had planned at all?
Yeah, that's definitely both books, actually, because the first book was just what happens if two, plane tickets become available, and really went on its own path. And then, this one started as just a neat romantic idea, but suddenly, ideas would come, or I'd see something and be like, oh, I need to incorporate that in my book. And there you go.
Do you find it hard? My husband doesn't really understand the whole writer part, and he often gets on me. He's like, "Why are you always writing?" And I was like, "Because I have stories in my head that don't leave, and they get triggered by just the smallest things. Somebody will say something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that would make a great story." Does the same thing happen to you, where just random things?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of funny because, I will do that. Or something. I'll be like writing, I'll be in the car, and so I get out my cell phone or piece of paper and I'm scribbling something. It's like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's an idea. I have to write it down. Or stop, I have to do this. Or don't bug me. I need to write an idea. And it can't just be the littlest thing or a song or even just a person I see, a stranger, but somehow I think, what is their story? And I come up with a storyline that I have to write down, and some ends up written down for others to read, and other things don't, and they kind of fizzle, but I still have to just get that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what is your writing process generally like? Are you a plotter? Do you sit and at least plot out like an outline of the book? Or do you just kind of start with your story and then let it go?
Kind of a mix. I can't quite plot out everything. I even think back to high school and things when they had to do an outline for an essay, and I just could not stick to it. But I do a vague outline of just a few ideas, and then start writing. And then halfway through the writing, I might highlight. What I do is, I type, and then I might highlight an idea, so I know it's not the book, but just, oh, I need this character to do this if an idea comes to me, or hey, switch that idea around, kind of my own flow of consciousness. So even though there's a vague idea of an outline, it's very fluid. And so that's also even with this second book, where I'm having writer's block, I have the outline and I know what to write, and I have an exact idea, but it just hasn't formed correctly yet, I guess. When I go to write, it just is gobbledygook. So I'm just going to go back and keep recrafting it until it works.
Yeah, I hate those writer's block stumbles. You know, when you finally get, I don't know about you, but I have three kids. And so I don't get a lot of good quality writing time. And so when I do, I want to be super productive. And sometimes I'll sit down and I'll be like, I totally had an idea of where I was going to go, but it's not working on the computer. Do you have something that you do to help you get over writer's block?
Sometimes I will try music. Every once in a while, music will just get me in that creative mode, but other times it doesn't, or I just get distracted with everything. I also have children. I have two children, so they can distract very easily. And like you, I want to get everything done when I'm in that mode, but life gets in the way. And then other times, I think a few weeks back, they were both watching a movie and really well behaved. And I thought, oh, I can go write. I can sit down and write. And it was just a painstaking process, and nothing happened. And I was just like, darn, I finally have time devoted, and I can't do it. So,
Yeah,
I guess that's why.
I think that's the most frustrating part. I wanted to work on my my third kids book, and so I thought, okay, I don't have to focus quite as much on this one because it's a pretty simple storyline, and it's 6,000 words. It doesn't feel as daunting as when you sit down to write a novel. But every time I'm trying and the kids are watching TV, I'm like, I can't focus. I'm so distracted by what they're watching, and they're still so little that I can't just like leave them there and go lock myself in my room all the time. That's the hard part. So, what is your favorite part of the writing process?
Probably just the actual writing, having those moments of just like creative bursts where you suddenly have just an idea and you have to get it out and you can't leave your computer and it's almost like your fingers are on fire and your brain's on fire as you type. And those are my favorite. Or even when something, I'll just type something like, wow, I wrote that. That's just a really neat quote or a really neat event, that happened to the characters. And I actually, almost get, well, depending on the event, but either excited for the characters or sad or angry or just really emotional when I go through what my characters go through. Even though I created them, it still elicits a response with me.
Yeah, I think that's really fun when you get to go back and relive it with your characters, and you're like, oh wow. I always like it when people read something and then they're like, I hated that character. And I was like, good, you were supposed to hate that character. Or, when they love a character that they're supposed to love. I think that's really fun when you feel like you've done your job, when people really can relate to what you've written. Yeah. Do you have a favorite? I know you only have, one book out now and then the second one that you're working on, but do you have a favorite character who stands out to you?
Oh, I've always tried to think of that in my book, at least in the one that's published, in a way. Well, obviously there's characters that are not good characters. They're characters that are supposed to be hated, so of course I hate them. But even in some of my characters that I'm fond towards more certain characters more than others. For example, the two parents that adopt, I care for them and I'm glad they adopted and I feel like I crafted their character well, but I just don't think I'd necessarily be friends with them in real life. I wouldn't be against them, but they just weren't, the type I would gravitate towards. But in my first book, the grandmother, I thought was one that I didn't think I would gravitate towards or really love when I started writing. But then upon reflection, I'm like, wow, she was really amazing. And then in my second book, the two main characters, I almost wanted to craft one of them after myself. And you always do a little bit of yourself, I think, in every character.
Yeah.
She really took on her own personality as well, even though there's elements of myself. And I am really excited on the personality that she has become. And that's just exciting too. So I do enjoy really all the characters, but I can't really pick a favorite necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's fun. I mean, the more you write, the more characters you have, and then it's really hard to kind of pick, from the ones that you've written. But I agree with you that we kind of put a little bit of ourselves in the characters, and then I take things from people that I see or people that I know, and they become, bits and pieces of my characters as well, which is always kind of fun. Sometimes more than they want to be. They're like, wait, what? When I tell them, I'm like, you were sort of the inspiration for this character. But usually that's a good thing because I don't write a whole lot of characters that are bad characters. But Okay, so let's talk about what's the hardest part of the writing process for you then, because a lot of people think, oh, it's just so easy, sit down and you write a book, but it isn't always easy. And we've talked about writer's block, but what's another part of the writing process that's really challenging?
It would be the editing. My first novel I edited, I had a few friends help that had edited in the past or would work, court reporters, teachers, that type of thing, just to have other eyes. But a lot of it I did myself. I think I edited my book 14 or 15 times myself and had friends edit it. And I think I had someone still find a few errors, but that's, that's life. I still find errors in, major publishing books. But that was just the hard part, because each time I edited it, I would find more and more mistakes. And sometimes that almost takes you down. Like, oh, wow, I totally forgot a comma there. And that was the wrong name. And that was the wrong idea. And that didn't make sense. And what's wrong with me? Why am I writing? And then also, even though I love the storyline, sometimes if you really sit down and edit a long time and then go right back to it, you're like, okay, I've read this 5,000 times, but I have to read it very carefully so I don't miss anything, but I'm so tired of reading it carefully. I just, you almost want to read your novel as a novel you would pick up at the library or the bookstore, but when it's your novel, you can't. And so it almost takes the joy out of reading, until it's finally published, then you can, I guess, read it, but just, it doesn't have much joy.
Do you when you edit, do you read it out loud? Because that's something I've read a lot that people say you should do, and I haven't done it yet, just because I kind of feel weird reading my book out loud, even if it's just me in the room. But is that something that you do when you're editing?
Not much. I've done it a few. If there's a section of my book I'm really excited about, I might read it out loud to my husband or a friend, but I haven't read the whole thing out loud because I would just feel awkward reading my book out loud to myself, and then I'd probably just get tired reading out loud. I was never, even in school, the one who wanted to read out loud. So I more enjoy reading it on my own, but I do notice if I read it out loud, I do find more errors.
That's true. I teach English, and I always tell the kids to read their essays out loud. I'm like, your brain thinks that your words are there and they're really not there. And if you read it out loud, you have a much harder time trying to insert words that aren't really there. Or you pick up on the things that, you pick up on the ones that showing that you've used the wrong word, or you've misspelled a word or something like that. You forgot an S or those kinds of things. But I think that would be hard when you have 60,000 words. It would take a lot for you to read all of that out loud. Absolutely. And what about the marketing part? Have you found that part has been easy or more of a challenge?
I would say a big challenge. I don't always think of it as a challenge because editing seems more of a pain. But with marketing, it's a challenge because it seems like as if I'm getting nowhere. And a lot of places will advertise marketing, but you never really know, should I invest my money in that? Is it actually worth it or not? So I don't want to give, it varies, $40 here and $1,000 there and all that for absolutely nothing. So I try to self-market, but that's difficult as well, word of mouth and that sort of thing, but that only takes you so far. So yeah, marketing's difficult, especially as a self-publisher, because I even went to a few local bookstores, and you would think an independent bookstore would support an independent author, but they said, oh, we only take from these, main publishers. You need to just get yourself published. And I thought, well, there goes my craft, because they could take, my words from me, like literally, and just the price for that too, to still maybe not sell that many copies. So
right.
Yeah, so it's disheartening sometimes. I'm not much of a, I guess, natural born salesperson. So I just sit there and really hope and pray that, the word will get out somehow through word of mouth, or someone, will find it and run through the streets, read this book or what have you, since marketing is very touchy, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard. And I've been watching some videos on Facebook marketing and Amazon marketing, and nobody seems to know exactly what works and what doesn't work, which then makes it really hard. When you're talking about investing money, you've already put money probably into the book to get it edited and formatted and your cover and everything else. And then you're having to invest even more money that you're not sure where that's going to go and what's going to happen with it. It's probably another reason why this woman wanting her book for free kind of bugged me, because I was like, you have no idea how much goes into all of this. I mean, even just putting a book on BookFunnel isn't free for us. It costs money to do that as well. And then, we're basically giving this book away for free in hopes of getting readers who will follow us and, want to read more. But you just never know when you're putting it out there. And I know that's probably what everybody does, deals with when they're marketing, but it feels harder, I think, when you've written something that's creative and you really want to share it and you can't yet. That's the hard part. Yeah, absolutely. Well, what would you recommend? What would be a suggestion that you would give to somebody who is thinking about writing? Like, what's something that you wish you knew at the beginning?
Well, first I would of course encourage them, but I would let them know, at least in my experience, in a way, the writing's the most exciting part and could be the quickest part. Of course, when you edit, you end up somewhat rewriting, but generally speaking, the writing process is the easiest. But I would also just encourage them to keep going through editing and formatting and finding cover and publishing and all that, because once you finally do it, it's just the most rewarding thing to say, wow, this is something, to hold something you made in your hands and say, this is, something I crafted, and to know that you worked not just to write it, but that you had some part in the editing or the cover design or whatever. It's all you, but it shows. So I would just encourage them to keep doing it, and that they can do it, and there'll be rough spots, but that doesn't mean you have to stop. You need to persevere.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that writers tend to have, like true writers, not people who think they can write a book and then they stop. But the true writers, I think we learn the act of perseverance, because there's so many things that you'll come across that you're like, oh, I'm not selling anything today. Should I keep writing? Or, I don't know how to design my own cover, and should I hire someone to do it? There's so many stumbling blocks that you could come across, and that you will come across as a writer. And I think that that's one quality that I think really good writers have, is they just keep writing. They just keep going.
Right.
Yeah, I think that really helps. For those of you who are watching out there, one other thing that would really, really help is if you read a book and you like a book, would you leave a review? It surprises me how many people will read a book and they'll be like, oh yeah, it was really good, but then they won't actually leave a review about it. And, I guess for like big manufacturing companies, because I don't do it for everything I buy, maybe they don't need reviews, but it's really important for authors, and especially self-published authors, but any author starting out, we need those reviews on books. And especially if you like the book, I don't think anyone really likes to have bad reviews. I know people leave them every once in a while, but if you like the book, it's really important to leave that review, because that really helps people out.
Yeah, more than just stars, 5 stars, but why did you give it 5 stars, or why did you give it 2, or what have you as well?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's maybe what turns people off, but I don't think you have to go into a huge like essay thing about it. A couple of sentences to a paragraph really helps people who are reading reviews, and helps us as authors, because if someone goes on and they're like, this is what I really hated about your book, then I can look at it for the next time and be like, okay, I either agree with you and I can make some changes, or it's a personal opinion and I don't agree with you, but so don't read my books again. But because that happened to a friend of mine. She had somebody leave a review on her book that there was too much kissing in a romance. And I was like, I don't know how you have too much kissing in a romance. So in that case, it was just the reader's preference, which was then hard, because she had this like 2-star review. And I was like, that's really unfortunate, because it wasn't about her writing style or, anything like that. It was just a personal preference from the reader. But she told me, she's like, I kind of hope this woman doesn't read any more books, because she obviously doesn't like what I put in my books. So don't read anymore. And that's kind of hard too, because you don't have any control over that. But we want people to read books, but we also want you to like the books that you read, because I think that's really important. There's a lot of books out there. You don't have to like everything you read. But it's really important that you do like what you read. Because I don't know about you, I hate trying to struggle through a book that I don't enjoy. I tend to just not finish it. I tend to just put it down and then never come back to it. All right. Well, we are going to make sure and link Gretchen's book on here. Tell us do you have an idea of when your next book will be out?
I would probably say sometime around the beginning of next year, just because at least if I go by my first book that I finished in May and then edited, at least now I know how to edit and format and I guess a seasoned one. But I haven't quite finished writing, so I would definitely say right around Christmas, New Year's is at least where I'm really aiming for.
All right. That sounds fantastic. So you guys can check out her first book. That's going to be posted in the article above. And Gretchen will supply links as well, so you guys can follow her wherever she has social media presence, and contact her if you have any questions. And then I'm sure that she will have a website or a place where you can follow to find out when the next book gets released. I know you can always follow the Amazon author profiles, and they will send you updates. So if you love an author, follow their Amazon profile, because then you'll get updates in your email when they release new books, and that's always kind of fun too. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Gretchen. It was super fun to have you on.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, and I enjoyed my time.
Absolutely. And for all of you out there in TLBTV land, we'll see you next week right here on Write the World.